All right. And we're live. Ain't that nifty? All right. So we have a very special guest today. I want to apologize right now. I'm a little under the weather today. I probably don't sound very well, and that's the case. But regardless, I'm super excited because we have one of our good friends and our first but also second guest, Ben Kassel. Why don't you introduce yourself, Ben?
Testing.
There we go.
All
All
right.
right.
Now I think we're back.
I think so.
We'll
Gonna
cut that
type.
out. We'll cut that out of the YouTube version.
There's
Yeah, so
always
it's been
like
it's been
20
an interesting
minutes.
week weather-wise, to say the least. Let's see. So
Yep.
we
I think we're all good now.
Yes, we're good.
we start off
Beautiful.
we start off with Southern California,
Well, hang
and
on, hang
their
on.
one
We gotta start from the
1,000
top
foot
again.
snow
Yeah.
levels.
Yeah, Ben, we got to home. We
We
got to
gotta
start
start from the
over
top
here.
again.
Yeah, tell us all about yourself again.
And your
Okay.
favorite color.
Okay, so I grew up really just having a passion for weather, severe weather, and everything. This was probably after, because like at one point I wanted to be a pilot, and then was like, you know what? I don't know if I want to do this job. This would be a high stress job. Then became interested in weather, had a big passion for it. Went to OU, and now I'm working for a private aviation firm in Houston as a meteorologist. And my favorite color is blue. And my favorite teams are kind of just spread around all over the country. You got the Broncos, the Dodgers, the Ducks,
You are all over the place, but it sounds like you have the
all
best of
over
both
the
worlds. You're ended
country.
up
Sooners.
you're working
Oh,
for
yeah.
aviation and doing the weather. Sounds
I
like
What was amusing to me was you said, "Oh yeah, being a pilot sounds like a really stressful job. I'm gonna be a meteorologist."
yeah.
Meteorologist for an aviation firm, I know.
Not exactly the least stressful job there is.
Yeah, it's
But
nice. Especially on nights like last night, man.
well, hey, that's a great segue. Will, let's get
Yeah.
into
Hey,
last
didn't
night.
plan that.
Yeah, so last night was very special. We had quite a bit of activity on the weather front, I should say. So, what do we want to start with?
Yeah,
Storm
I guess
reports.
we can do that. Yeah, just kind of go over an overview of what kind of happened yesterday.
All right.
Yesterday was a moderate risk day from the SPC. So if you think about it on a scale, it's a 4 out of 5. So up there in terms of severe risk. The leading thought was we would have initial supercells forming, so storms that could potentially produce tornadoes because they have rotating updrafts, forming in the Texas Panhandle east of Amarillo. And that kind of did happen. These storms were racing off to the east, though, at about 80 miles an hour. I mean, these things were moving. But then the thinking was that it would transform into more of a linear event. So it become just kind of a squall line of storms that would push off. And that would create sort of a very short-lived tornado threat. So you'd have quick spin-ups on the leading edge of that. But unfortunately, that didn't. It happened, but it also didn't. We got some embedded. They're called QLCS tornadoes, quasi-linear convective system, which is just a fancy word for squall line. We had a few of those tornadoes, but then unfortunately, we had a segment of the line that actually kind of transformed into an embedded supercell within this line. So it was an actual supercell that was just connected to this line that produced a fairly significant tornado for, believe it or not, the Norman, Oklahoma region. For those who don't know, the University of Oklahoma is located in Norman. Luckily, campus was spared. It formed about miles south of campus and nearly hit the, believe it or not, the National Weather Center. It almost hit the Weather Center, hit a few student housing complexes off to the east of campus. Not student housing, they're not technically sanctioned by the university, but they're largely lived in by students. And it was a pretty violent tornado that moved off to the north and east and eventually hit the Shawnee, Oklahoma area, which unfortunately it's kind of their second big hit in less than a year. They got hit by a pretty large multi-vortex tornado back in, I want to say it was early May last year. But yeah, it was a pretty eventful event. I know there's parts of Norman on the south side. For those who don't know, or those who do know, on the south side, there's a Walmart. Kind of State Highway 9 runs through there. That whole area has kind of been blocked off due to some damage and blocking the roads. So, pretty significant event for Norman. It's probably the closest call campus has had in a while.
And what's interesting is there's a bit of a urban myth about a so-called Norman bubble. Which is that severe weather happens around Norman and everywhere in Oklahoma but Norman. But I believe this kind of, I think this kind of counts for disproving that.
Oh, it definitely counts.
Obviously,
this is the kind of stuff that everyone thinks happens in more.
Obviously, that's just kind of a meme. But so I've pulled up here it's SPC storm reports. These are preliminary reports, so they're not certified yet. But this is just what like the storm spotters and.
Do you want to share this on
managers.
Discord too, so we can see it?
It should be on Discord.
Is it? Let's see.
Yeah, it's on Discord.
Okay. Oh, yep. I'm just not bright.
So yeah. So here's the total. This is preliminary, right? They haven't certified these. Yeah, preliminary. So only 9 tornado reports, and I say only because I'm looking up here at the Texas Panhandle, and I saw, because I have family in the Texas Panhandle, so I was keeping an eye on it. But I saw that there were several tornado warnings for that area, so I'm a little surprised that there weren't any reports. I guess what that tells me is that all that was radar indicated and was probably obscured by wind, debris, and rain.
I think
if there was anything.
Yeah, I was watching some streams out there, namely Reed Timmer and some of the News 9 and Oklahoma chasers. It looked very high precipitation with a lot of hail. There was definitely a decent wall cloud at one point just to the southeast of Amarillo, south of I-40.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I saw a video of that as well.
But I'm not sure if it ultimately produced anything.
Actually, oh man, I forgot to. So before the stream, we had kind of compiled some of the pictures from these events. One I meant to send was from my mother. She actually got a pretty good picture of a wall cloud from Pampa, where we live. I don't really have time to try and pull that up now. But that was last night. And so I think it's worth kind of delving into why we had what we had, because we've had these low pressure systems that kind of, if you can see my mouse, they kind of go down the west coast, move over the terrain, lee cyclogenesis, strengthen, and then blow through and make their way up east. We've had a ton of those since January. We've just had them one after the other. What made this one different? If y'all each want to chime in on that. Uh-oh, where'd everybody go? Don't know why. I don't know why we always have
There's
something
always
go
something.
wrong. But
Always something.
this is so frustrating.
It's like at work, always something that goes wrong.
Literally, there's always something. And actually, I think this is a little bit there. Okay. Where were we?
Yeah, where were we? That's a good question.
We were on.
There's been a bunch of
Yes, we
lows
were.
coming through.
That's right,
There's
yes.
been a bunch of lows coming through and getting generated from lee cyclogenesis. But what makes this one different, Colin?
Yes,
Oh,
that's
good
right.
memory, Ben. Very good memory.
This
All
is-
right.
This is why we love Ben.
Yeah, I guess I can
His
kinda jump in
talents
on
are
this.
beyond comprehension.
Yeah, I guess for this event, and it was just oriented right. I guess you had a good upper level trough, kind of right across the South Plains with winds ripping out of the southwest. Which, when you have winds like that for and it's rounding sort of the bottom of a trough, you get a lot of upper level divergence, which simply just means air is moving, kind of vacating an area up in the atmosphere, um, which leads to a lot more upward motion at the surface, right? Because if you clear a space of something that's there, something has to come back in to fill that void, right? So you get more upward motion at the surface. That coupled with the moisture for this event arrived kind of right on time. Like it was right.
Yes.
Dew points in Norman didn't hit into the 60s until very late in the afternoon. It was you just have all this southerly wind getting pulled from this low pressure system coming through. That what happens is you get moisture that's down by the Gulf of Mexico pulled across Texas from where Ben is. So you can thank Ben for this severe event.
Yeah, you can thank me, and you can thank the Southern California of Texas for your severe weather.
Yeah, so all that moisture gets drawn northwards, and that moisture was essentially fuel for the storms. You can't have storms if the atmosphere is too dry. And what we had initially out in western Texas, it's called a dry line. And what happens is, just due to the circulation around a low pressure system and sort of the way the boundaries form, you get some really warm, dry air in behind this dry line, kind of with winds coming like this. And then out ahead of it, you'll have southeasterly winds that's more warm and water laden air that'll come. And when they intersect, right, it happens right on that boundary. And it's called convergence. And what convergence does is it pushes air upwards, which is what helps initiate thunderstorms. Now, we also had a cold front crashing down behind that. That is what created the QLCS squall line event. As it overtook the dry line and moved east of it, it became the primary convergence zone for these storms and led to a lot more linear storm motion going up along it.
Yeah, you're spot on with all of that. One of the things to me that was interesting was, like you mentioned, the moisture. We had, at least here in Lubbock, we had winds from the southeast like 20 to 25 miles an hour, and everything. So, like, again, just pulling all that Gulf moisture up into the area, making it readily available. But then on the flip side of that, when the system did pass and we had that dry line, that, kind of the packing on that, again, the winds through our area were so severe, like 40-45 miles an hour sustained gust, like
when the wind comes racing down the plains.
Yeah. And so similarly, what that did was it really packed that dry line in there. Like such a distinct boundary. Sometimes when the boundaries are more messy, if they're not as definitive, you could say, you don't get the sort of lifting action that you do with like those really tight, really packed boundaries.
Yeah, I think I saw from the official Lubbock OB after the dry line pushed through, relative humidity plummeted to like 10%.
Yeah, so we can actually take a look at that. So, keeping with the severe thunderstorm track.
And Ben, if you have anything to add, feel free to jump
please
in.
Do.
We don't want to be hogging all the airtime here.
So this is the sounding from Norman. OU sounding at 3 3Z.
Oh man. So this is for some context. This sounding was taken, whoever had the foresight to put this sounding out is a genius, because this sounding went out about 20 minutes before the tornado touched down in Norman. And when I say this is one of the most fascinating soundings I've ever seen, I mean it. I mean, it's incredible.
We talk about one of the professors we had an all-star sounding project. We've talked about it a few times, but this deserves to be one.
This is one that will
this deserves to be one.
He'd be slamming his fist for that EML there.
So Ben, why don't you take this one?
Oh, talk about the sounding?
Yeah. Just
all right.
Whatever you find interesting.
The biggest takeaway with that sounding, the OUN sounding anyways, is so the SRH at 1 kilometer, that was 1017.
And
Whenever
maybe
whenever that
go ahead. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say maybe let folks know what the SRH is.
Yes, so the basically it helps indicate like I guess in a sense how much shear and how much spin is available in the atmosphere, how much wind shear there is. And whenever that value starts to get, even if it's like 300, 400, 500, that's still a lot.
Mhm.
But 1017, that is just a ridiculous amount of shear.
Yeah, for context,
in
just
the
to add on there,
environment.
we learn in class that typically for a tornado, you want your 0 to 3 kilometers, so from the ground up to 3 kilometers in the atmosphere. You want your storm relative helicity, which is what SRH is, and like Ben mentioned, it's just kind of a measure of how much wind shear is there. You typically want it to be at least 150
Mhm.
to have a chance at a tornado. So 1,000 is insane. Like it's one of the
It's a
highest
really
values I think I can remember ever seeing.
and so yeah, SRH, the storm relative helicity, that's 1 to 3 kilometers. But another thing you want to look at, so I guess for context, right? For severe thunderstorms, you need shear, lift, instability, and moisture. And so shear is the wind change or the change in wind direction from like the surface to some designated height above. And so for so the 0 to 3 kilometer or surface 3 kilometer, these wind barbs here on the side, these show you the direction the wind is coming from. So the flags at the end, that's the tail. Like if you think of it of like a weather vane arrow, the tail, or like the feathers on an arrow, that shows which way it's pointing. Um, so this shear here is coming from the south southeast, and so we have here at the surface the south southeast wind. By the time you're up to 3 kilometers, that's more of a southwest. But look, by the time you get all the way up to like 12 or 15, that's just a straight up westerly flow. And so that amount of that difference from surface to even like the upper levels right here, it's a really good helper for the storm to actually uh, get some of the vorticity it needs.
Yeah, we call that a veering wind profile. Anytime you have winds going from the
Mm-hmm.
east, southeast, south, and that with height turn
Yes.
to the west, it's a veering profile. And veering profiles are necessary for creating supercells that at least spin cyclonically. You can have some anti-cyclonic movement in there, which just means the storm spins the other way, but those tend to be far weaker and far, far less common.
And it's a little confusing because cyclonic refers to counterclockwise, but veering profiles move clockwise. So this like would move. I keep like trying to gesture, but even no one can see what I'm.
The interesting thing when forecasting in the southern hemisphere, it's the opposite.
Yeah. So the other side of that coin is backing wind profiles, which are counterclockwise, but they are more indicative of anticyclonic motion, which is weird to think about. But yeah, so this is a awesome textbook sounding. Look at the nose on it.
And typically, folks, I mean, that what we call that is a cap. It's a warm nose. It's a layer of warm air that's aloft in the atmosphere that's warmer than the air below it, right? So you have the old adage, warm air rises, right? Well, what happens when that warm air hits air that's warmer than it? It can't rise anymore, right? So that creates a lid for the atmosphere. But when you have, and typically that limits any storm potential. However, when you have a cold frontal system, which has a lot of forcing, right? It forces the air upward. And I believe there was recordings from the Mesonet in Norman that showed there was a rise in pressure of 5 to 6 millibars behind the cold front.
Yes.
And while that might not seem a lot, that generates a lot of lift. So it allowed these storms to punch through that. And once you get above that layer, there's nothing to stop these storms from going. And also, you have a little bit of some dynamic cooling effects due to the storms raining on that sort of cap area. When you rain into an area, you kind of bring the temperature in that area down overall, so it kind of weakens the cap a little bit. But the dynamic forcing from that cold front was really what set this thing off. I'm completely nerding out about this sounding. This is one of the most incredible soundings I've ever
The
seen.
amount of forcing too with that cold front, like there is a temperature inversion there and everything, but that temperature inversion didn't even mean anything. With
It's also worth mentioning that the storm was already in progress when it hit this environment, right? The storm started way out west and kept pushing in. And when supercells in their center cores, right, they have their own pressure perturbations. So supercells essentially act as mini areas of low pressure. And a lot of times the dynamics around that render an atmosphere that otherwise wouldn't produce storms completely useless. That cap does not matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, I mentioned the 4 ingredients, right? Shear, lift, instability, moisture. Well, we've covered all 4 of those, right? We have this varying profile. So there's your shear, the cold front, just like the packed pressure gradients in general, right? That lift, instability. Actually, we haven't really covered instability, but
instability
moisture.
is kind of on the surface. The instability is kind of crap for lack of a better word. If you based it off the sounding.
Yes, and here's my thing, right? So we have this significant warm nose. That's so this red brownish dotted line here, right? Everything to its right, or everything that's between that red temperature profile and that is sin or convective inhibition. Again, like he talked about, that's a layer that's keeping convection from happening. But when you get past that and it does finally break free, and the temperature of the air, we kind of think of it as like a little parcel or like a package of air. Once that temperature gets above what its surrounding environment, it's free to be buoyant, right? And so then this area where the red line is underneath, that is all CAPE, or convective available potential energy. I had to think about it for a second. So that's all CAPE. So this is all, like, if you think of it as, this isn't the scientific way you'd put it, but if you think about it as like buoyancy, right? This is all positive and this is all negative. And so once like these two kind of cancel out, what's left over is kind of your total sum. Again, not the way there would be professors snatch me bald headed for saying that, but like it's the general way I understood it, right? When I was kind of getting into it.
You know, there's some more work being done on what's the best way to measure CAPE. For example, Dr. John Peters at Penn State University has worked on some stuff called entrainment CAPE. The idea is the environment around a storm limits how much that CAPE it actually uses, or can help it.
Which is why I don't want to interrupt you, but that's why like we have different kinds of CAPE, right? We have surface-based CAPE, mixed layer CAPE, and that's because this, like, any one system can't use all the CAPE that's available to it.
Yeah, typically storms use less than the forecast amount of CAPE possible, except the exception to this rule that I've seen so far, based on some of the stuff I've read, is supercells. Supercells, if you look at the average vertical velocities of their updraft based on, the whole 2 CAPE or square root of 2 CAPE equals there's an equation for this basically to calculate how quickly the updraft should be in this amount of CAPE. Supercells operate at supreme efficiency. I'm talking like 150% efficiency because of the dynamics in play within them. So I think that's a prime case of what happened here, exceeding the amount of CAPE that's technically there.
But again, to highlight what's weird about this is this isn't just a lone supercell. This is effectively a supercell that's embedded in a squall line,
which should typically limit some of this because you get very strong cold air in behind these supercells that typically wraps around the cyclone very quickly. And when supercells or tornadoes have their warm air cut off, it ends up killing the tornado, because tornadoes are essentially the product of the gradient between warm and cold air. They need that balance between the warm and cold air to form.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, the supercell was very well maintained. It kept sort of that RFD, rear flank downdraft, which is where all the cold air is, to the southwest of the storm on the backside. It kept it from fully wrapping around, and it was certainly something to watch on radar. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really just a bizarre instance. But it wasn't just the tornadoes. I'm going to segue a little bit.
Yeah.
It wasn't just if we go back to the storm reports, wasn't just all tornadoes. In fact, you'll notice most of these little blue dots are wind reports. And that's because this was an enormous windbag. Like, this was a really, really potent wind generator.
Just to kind of explain why that is. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you
go
off.
ahead.
Just to explain why that is very quickly. Like we mentioned earlier, there was a lot of really strong winds aloft in the atmosphere. And with the way that this system evolved, when you get very strong downdrafts on the backside of these storms, it can bring that strong air aloft, which wasn't that high up. The lower level winds were extremely strong, say 850, 800, 700 millibars, so a few kilometers up in the atmosphere. You can bring that down very easily to the surface in these downdrafts, and that's what happened here.
Also, from like an aviation standpoint, a lot of like the TAFs at the airports and everything, they had wind shear warnings with like really strong gusty winds, 65 to 80 knots, like at 2,000 feet. And so it doesn't really take a whole lot to bring that near the surface with those downdrafts.
Yeah, it was certainly a very, very all modes of severe weather were in play yesterday. Tornadoes, wind, hail. Saw multiple reports of golf ball size hail, especially out in Texas, where the storms were a little bit more discreet and by themselves instead of in a line. Typically, once you get into linear mode, hail becomes less of a factor. Tornadoes tend to become a little bit less of a factor. Not yesterday. And wind becomes the primary thing. So early on, when the cells are kind of by themselves and don't have to compete against each other as much, it allows for more efficient hail production typically.
Yeah, so we had significant winds. It started. So I'm just going to give it to you from the perspective of here in Lubbock. So for us, it started in the morning from the southeast, gradually becoming a bit more south, and then as that low pressure gradient moved through, or I shouldn't say low pressure gradient, but as that system moved through, right, the winds switched direction behind the boundary, as is typical. But what it did was, it didn't just drag the air with it. Well, I mean, it did. But like, there was a lot of acceleration due to the fact that this system did undergo least cyclogenesis, or which that's essentially just moved over the mountainous terrain and strengthened. That's the easiest way to put it. So not only is it dragging all this hot westerly wind, but it's also got the wind from the upper levels that's kind of working alongside it to pull more momentum in. And essentially what that did was, it just turned all of the South Plains into just Dust Bowl Part 2. Like, it was very, very, very bad. And I'm trying to pull up some.
Yeah, for people on the East Coast, don't be surprised and don't panic if you see some dust end up on your cars like you did last week with the system that came through that pulled some dust. Might even be worse this week. I know people were panicking, thinking it was debris from that train wreck in Ohio. No, it was just dust from Oklahoma. Little present from the Okies to you.
Yep. Not even Oklahoma. Like that's realistically, right? That's like Nevada, New Mexico, and Texas, and Oklahoma. Like, that's all of our country.
Yeah.
Like, we all contribute.
The entire desert Southwest sent a greeting.
So I'm trying to find.
Makes it look like the Middle East.
Yeah,
no,
I mean,
actually,
UAE and.
Yeah, so I guess we can transition to that. So
Holy cow!
yeah, so I'm gonna
Wow, look at
switch to
that.
this on the screen so y'all can see a bit. So this, taken by a friend of mine, somewhere around Lubbock. He wasn't too clear on where this was, but that's, folks, that's visibility less than 100 yards.
I'm gonna take a look at Lubbock's past METAR data. Let's see.
Yes, actually, if you
I'm sure they
can,
had the blowing snow in there, or not blowing dust.
if you,
Probably.
Ben, if you can find um, peak gusts for yesterday on their METAR, send,
Yeah, I'm gonna
drop the
do
link in the
that.
Discord, and I'll pull it up.
Yeah, on that note, I do think the highest wind gust reported yesterday was behind the cold front in Memphis, Texas, which for those who don't know is east of Amarillo. Cute little town. I've been there before chasing. What gas? The Love's Get travel stop there is a hot storm
Yes,
chaser spot.
dude,
Um, the Memphis Loves is
the Memphis
iconic.
Loves is iconic.
Okay.
um,
Let's
and I
see.
wonder if the Palo Duro Canyon had a little bit of impact on this as well.
I'm sure
Um,
there's, and
they
that's what's
recorded
cool, right?
they
Um,
reported a peak wind gust
right.
there of
Zero
114 miles per hour.
zero statute miles of visibility and 66 knot gust with.
Yeah, Ben, go ahead and drop that in the Discord, and I'll pull it up.
Okay.
So,
I also think. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so what's interesting to me, you mentioned Paladuro Canyon, the impact that might have on it. Yeah, like we can sit here and talk about all the stuff in the upper atmosphere and all the large scale events that are going on, and all that is, primary. That's all like the driving factors. But when you get down to like the small scale, where things like little little terrain features, right? When those start affecting how stuff turns, like it gets so much more complicated, and that's
Oh,
why.
it does, and we can't really model that very well in our
Uh-huh.
weather models because of the computing power. Sometimes our best storm scale models are maybe 3 kilometers in resolution, a kilometer.
Mhm.
So it's very hard to replicate those fine scale details. We're just not quite there in terms of the computing power needed to do that yet. Maybe sometime in the future. I sure hope so, um, because I do think the slight terrain differences probably
Um,
play a very large
hey
impact.
Ben, can you try sending just the link to it?
Oh yeah, sure thing.
I was just gonna pull it up.
I think I also saw. I think at least News 9 in OKC was reporting. I think everybody in their viewing hour saw at least a 50-mile-per-hour wind gust
Mhm.
yesterday, which
Oh
is
yeah,
crazy.
it was bad. So actually, one second. I'm gonna blow my nose.
By the way, shout
I
out to all
apologize.
the news stations in OKC. I was streaming some of that from here yesterday, and everyone did such a
Yes,
fantastic
actually,
job staying on the
I
situation.
want to give a very, very, very special shout out to the OU Nightly team.
Yes.
I'm biased. I did OU Nightly for for some time. I don't know. A few semesters isn't really a long time in the full lifespan of a person, but I'm OU Nightly's near and dear to me, and their wall to wall coverage was
For their first time ever too.
fantastic.
First time ever
Yes,
doing it, and it was incredible. It was great
and
stuff.
Colton Williams
Oh,
was just
fantastic.
a pro. Like he got up there and he led. Like he did such a good
You
job.
couldn't tell this is a student run
No, it was
thing they
it
put
was
on.
so
This was
professional. It was
very
such a
well.
good.
And for those who don't know, if you ever want to go into broadcast meteorology, journalism, the OU Gaylord College of Mass Communication is one of the
Uh-huh.
top in the country. It
Hmm.
is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I have my I have some gripes, but overall, like you're not gonna find anything better. Um, but seriously, like those folks did such a fantastic job. I wish I was there for that.
It's on their YouTube. If anyone wants to go watch it, I highly
Yes,
suggest you go to the OU Nightly YouTube and
I
rewatch their live stream. It was so professionally done.
I agree, and I think when we re-upload this, I'll have the link to that in the description. Um, I can't like commend those guys enough. They did a really good job. But yeah, we should get Colton on too. Like
That'd be great.
He was such a Chad up there. Like, he did so good.
It'd be
But
great
yeah,
to have a current OU student perspective on there too.
awesome wall to wall coverage. Just really, really phenomenal. All right, Ben. Let's see. All right. Yes. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull up this and
1,600 feet of like viewing from a cockpit point of view on the runway, on the main runway.
That's
so,
not good.
Mr. Aviation Meteorologist, man, why don't you explain this METAR data for us?
So basically, Lubbock had a 66 knot wind gust, and that is what generated a what you would see in a METAR as plus DS, which is a heavy dust storm. That is really, really bad. Zero visibility. And runway at 17 right, which is basically the main runway, and that is you're taking off south. You're taking off to the south, basically. That is a three. That's 1,600, only 1,600 feet of from like a cockpit point of view. If you're a pilot, you can only see 1,600 feet down that runway, and that is really, really bad.
Yeah, so I looked it up because I don't know knots. 66 knots is 76 miles an hour. 76 miles an hour.
That's crazy.
That's is that Cat 1?
Ooh,
Cat 1.
Yeah, that's Category 1 hurricane.
Category 1 strength.
That's ridiculous. So yeah, we had I want to say for like the peak wind times, probably 5 or 6 hours of just peak like 50-mile-an-hour sustained winds gusting like 65, 70. Here in Lubbock, the sky was red. Like as you saw in that picture, visibility super, super low. Sky was just like blood red from all the dirt. My poor apartment, like I can see it from here. There's just a pile of dirt in my apartment, like in front of the door. I had towels covering the windowsills, the bottom of the door, and the side of the door. Didn't matter. There was so much dust in the air. I was like breathing it in. You could like see it under the lights. It was very, 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 very poor conditions here in Lubbock. So I guess if you'd rather, if the choice is between severe weather or just inhaling asbestos dirt, I think I'd take the severe weather.
It's the plot. It's basically the plot of Interstellar.
Yeah. But no, so all that, and that's what's so interesting about these huge synoptic systems, right? It's like what, some little blob of low pressure, and you get like all these severe thunderstorms and tornadoes, and then to its west you get these dust bowl effects, and then in a few I don't actually know how long. What's our ETA for that to hit the East Coast?
I think it's moving through parts of Kentucky today, so maybe overnight tonight into tomorrow.
Yeah, and so just a few hours that's going to be on the East Coast, and it's going to be possibly giving them like snow and mixed sleet. And
you tell me about it. I hate it here.
And then a few hours prior, it was like mixed snow, sleet, and also just like flooding torrential rains in California. It's like that's one system that's
and California from that system. California from that system had snow levels down to 1,000 feet, which is incredibly rare. Usually, growing up there, I would see with cold systems coming through, snow level down to 2,000 feet. It snows in my hometown. There's a few inches, but it doesn't usually get below 2,000 feet. So seeing that it got all the way down to 1,000 feet and like the foothills of LA getting snow, that's pretty crazy.
Well,
even though it's just a dusting, the fact that it did get that low is crazy.
And I think what was interesting too was, you know,
Ben just left. Ben just said, "I'm out."
I just
We
went to
lost
plug
Ben.
in my
Oh,
computer.
okay. Fair enough. We want you sticking around. So, what was also interesting with that is, what was it? The San Diego office, San Diego Weather Service office, did their first ever blizzard warning.
Wow,
Wasn't that
that's
LA.
how about
LA?
It was
that?
LA.
Okay.
LA forecast office issued a blizzard warning for above 2,000 feet because of the blowing snow that was in the forecast. And the windiest conditions were close to the Pacific, which does make sense because of all that onshore flow coming off the Pacific and everything. Of course, like where mine and then Tyler's hometown in Ukaipa was, they got snow and everything, but they didn't really see the blowing snow, I guess, in a sense that the LA mountains saw. That is really, really bad.
It's just crazy to me how powerful these systems are and how wide reaching they are. I am going to pull up the next picture we have. This is tornado damage in Norman. A friend of mine's, I'm not sure their connection. I think a friend of mine, friend from church, had their home destroyed or partially, not leveled, thankfully. But
Yeah, thank goodness.
obviously,
I mean, that's still some failure. I
that's
can't speak to
significant
how
damage.
well this house was built. Typically, sometimes the building quality can be suspect at times in some places out in the plains. But I mean, this looks like a brick home. You see the window has been pushed in there. I mean, the roof
The
is
roof's
is
gone.
gone. And so I hate people on Twitter that assign damage ratings, but this looks solid EF2 to me, in my personal opinion, based on what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And I think even once you get farther out to closer to Lake Thunderbird and Shawnee, Oklahoma, I would wager I've seen some photos of some trees debarked, which would indicate even maybe upwards of EF3.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I was thinking high end EF2, low end EF3,
I think
somewhere
that's a
around there.
good segue into our Twitter segment because I think I would like to try and figure out. Obviously, we're not the professionals who rate the storms. That's done days after the fact once they have time to kind of analyze
Extensive
it.
looking at damage and how things were built.
But I'd kind
Because
of like to hazard
the,
a guess at it just to kind of just get it out there.
the
So
rating's always off of damage, not off of wins.
Yes,
yes,
that's very and look, that's the best way we can do it right now. We don't have the radar network in place to rate tornadoes based on
wind
radar
speed.
imagery. We don't have the ability to do it based on observations because observations are so sporadic. The EF scale is flawed. Everybody knows it, but it's the best that we have at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, I do think a change is in order. Hopefully, sometime in the near future. I think it's due. I think when radar data is available or observation data is available, it should probably be incorporated at times. But that you're opening up a can of worms there with that.
Yeah, and I think everybody would agree that it would be nice if we could do a rating scale similar to hurricanes, where we base off wind speed. But like he said, like we just don't have the capability for that, and we do calculate wind speeds after the fact. But it's like a retroactive, like here's the wind speeds necessary for this amount of damage. So it's not quite like if you think about a hurricane or a tropical storm, it's really easy. I don't want to get the hurricane hunters mad at me, but it's relatively easy to get a wind speed on a hurricane because it's big and slow, and you can fly observations through it. Whereas tornadoes pop up and they're relatively, like compared to a hurricane, they're relatively small. They pop up in and out quickly, sometimes unpredictably, and so you can't get an observation to it that quickly, especially in large scale events like this where we have tons and tons and tons of these small pop-ups.
Yeah, look, the EF scale it certainly is probably correct most of the time, but there are times, say for example, the El Reno tornado back in 2013 is probably the most obvious example. That tornado was 2.5 miles wide and had radar near tornado observations of over 300 miles an hour. Um, now there are some concerns as to how valid that wind speed measurement is, but if a tornado is 2.5 miles wide, it should be an EF5 in my opinion, but it didn't hit anything, so it
Yeah.
was rated an EF3 for the damage that it did cause. Um, I think Colin, yeah, Colin, you have the Twitter stuff pulled up here.
Yes. So our Twitter corner here.
This is from Andrew. I'm not entirely sure how he pronounces his last name, but
I think that'd be a Muir.
yeah, probably. Make sure to shout out everyone we see here
Yes.
on Twitter.
And we do appreciate all of the folks we'll see here. But yeah, look at this, right? We got
Man, look at that hook echo.
again. It's an embedded. It's
The speed of the storm's really limited. How clear the
Reminded
mesocyclone
me a
is.
lot like last month with the Southeast Houston tornado.
Yeah. This is taken
pretty
from
decent.
the Traditions East apartments on the OU campus. For those who don't know, this is just south of the main campus area where all the student dorms are. This is just north of the baseball fields and the Lloyd Noble Center. Ben and I lived there for 3 years,
3 years,
and never
yep.
once saw this.
and
Andrew managed
and I lived in the Traditions West, which is right
across the street.
Yeah, right across the street.
This is a hell of an image, excuse my language, to come through here. This is as he was going towards the storm shelter, I believe. So this is on the open side. So very clearly you can see the tornado forming there. This looks like that would put it just south of Highway 9, just south of the Weather Center. It's probably right behind the what's the gas station that's right there? Ben, your barbecue place.
No,
Oh,
it's
Rudy's.
yes,
Rudy's. Yes, the Rudy's right there. That actually looks very near the Canadian River, actually,
What's the
just by
Conoco?
35.
So I was told that not only was Highway 9 shut down, covered in debris, but it also ripped the roof off of that brand new OnQ.
Yes, the OnQ.
That
Yes,
was
in Norman.
Literally
For
just
those who know,
built like a few months ago.
yeah, right. It's right by the intersection of Classen in Norman, in South Norman, and Highway 9. It's right off there where the Panda Express, Starbucks, and everything else is there. That area looks like it got hit pretty decently there. I'm not sure exactly where the core of the tornado went or how big it was at that point, but certainly looks like it passed very close to there. It helps living in this area having some knowledge of where those things are.
Yeah. Again, man, it's just so annoying that I'm never in the area when these things happen. So we got our next segment of Twitter Corner. So this is from James Ledoux, I believe. View of the Norman tornadoes beginning just next to the South Research Campus of OU. So this is
I
around
believe he was very near the National Weather Center parking lot when he took this. There you go. You can see the Weather Center right there. And look at just watch the lightning in this. The lightning in this video is incredible. Actually, Colin, I need to send you the video of the OU campus live stream feed, and it's a quick time lapse, but the lightning, and then you can see the power flickering.
Yeah, go ahead and send me that. So this right here, it looks like a blob of lights, but that's the National Weather Center. I think I know where he is. So that's like the
yeah, that might be the Stevenson parking lot.
Yeah, that's the
like just north of the Weather Center. Yeah.
Yes, right across the street, essentially.
I'm actually going to disagree. I think this was a case to shelter, because there was so much damage that ended up happening eventually, but also the thing is, right? There are many times when they call for you to take shelter and nothing happens. and then people are like, oh, you were wrong. That's true, but given how little we know and kind of how rapidly some of these situations unfold, I think it's better to go ahead and take shelter. Like, I don't want to say like at the drop of a hat, but like more often than not. A lot of them, a lot of the systems where you're like, oh, I'm not sure. Should we shelter? Should we not shelter? That's fair, but you can only like not shelter wrong once. If that makes
Basically, if
sense.
the circulation is within the vicinity of you or by you, you should
Well,
shelter.
look. Well, I'll make it even more clear
Even
cut.
if it's
If you're
next
if
to
you're
you.
if you are inside a tornado warning, take shelter.
Yes.
It's really that simple.
Yeah.
Because
If you're in the
tornado motion is extremely erratic at times. And yeah, we have a general idea of typically how they move, but they can sometimes pull to the southeast and pull the storm southeast. When they tend to weaken, they quickly shoot off to the north and northeast. These things can move
They can
anywhere.
They
You
can
get
spin off. They can spin off budding circulations too.
yes, you can get secondary
They can-
mesocyclones that
they
form
can
and
loop
another
around
tornado
like El
form.
Reno.
Yes, you never quite know. So if you are inside a tornado warning, take shelter.
If you're in the polygon,
I get
getting your hole.
Just
I get in
back
today's day.
in.
In
Oh,
today's
sorry.
day and age, everyone wants to get the shot.
Mhm.
If you don't know what you're looking at, if you're not in an area that you know is safe, take shelter. The storm chasers who are out there chasing these storms, for the most part, know what they're looking at. They know where the safe part of the storm is. That typically the public doesn't quite know. And so if you are inside a tornado warning, get inside, get into your storm shelter, basement, interior closet, bathroom. Oftentimes bathrooms are the only
Interior
room
bathroom.
left
Yeah.
standing because some of the piping around helps reinforce the walls.
These pipes got to go down at least 30 feet.
It always comes
Oh,
back.
I tell you, I
it always
mean,
comes
always
back.
comes back to every single time. You're gonna have to make a compilation.
The severe weather event in Houston last month. That severe weather event, the circulation and everything. You could see the inflow coming into one of them bedded supercells, and the circulation. I was like, you know what? This is probably going to go to my north, but I'm going to just go into my interior bathroom just to be on the safe side. Because
And the tornado the tornado might miss you, but there are other impacts in the storms that can still cause damage. Hail, straight line winds behind the tornado often can be more damaging than the tornado itself over a wider area. You just never know with these systems. It gets really crazy once you start seeing the power flashes. I mean, just look at the lightning here. I mean, it's almost constant.
You can see hail, but there's also, let me roll it back, there's some kind of rolling debris. Is that just a big hailstone?
So he's clearly getting, I wonder if you can see the wind shift there.
Yeah, so these eventually. Right here, these appear to be rolling hailstones. If you kind of watch down here. That's something.
It's probably tree debris.
Yeah,
tree debris. Look, you can see the wind. Look at the wind shift direction. Look at the wind shift there now. Now they're coming a little bit more at him.
I don't actually know how big was the hail.
Oh, you can see the weather center is off in the distance there in the background.
Yeah. How big was the hail in this event?
I'm not entirely sure. But look at the wind shift. Look at the wind pulling into the tornado now. And you can see the power flash, those bright blue flashes of the tornado hitting power lines and taking power lines down.
Technically speaking, not necessarily tornado.
True.
But yes.
But at least power lines are being damaged. But you can clearly, typically,
it's usually used to indicate tornadoes.
Yes. I think you can almost kind of see the condensation funnel there, very, very briefly. At nighttime chases, it's very hard to identify, especially at night, why taking shelter is more important. Look at that. Oh, yep, you can see it right there.
When it's an embedded supercell.
You can see the funnel right there.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
And this thing was hauling ass as well. with the winds right now are probably that you saw the winds are blowing at him initially. Oh wow. Wow. Look at that.
I
That is not a
just
that is
happened
not
to
a
stop it at the right time.
that is not a scrawny tornado.
No,
That is a fairly significant tornado right there. You can kind of see. Wow, look at the motion in that.
this guy might be a
Sorry
bit
if I'm
too
blowing out.
close.
Sorry if I'm blowing out anyone's
No,
eardrums
no,
right
you're
now.
good.
Look at the rain curtain motion in there.
I'm trying.
That is incredible.
I'm trying to stop it at the right time.
Yeah, this tornado probably only passed a mile or so to his south.
He's too close. Okay.
Just seeing the rain curtains wrapping around that sucker is
based
crazy.
on that rain curtain motion, how big do you think this is?
It's hard to tell. You can't really tell because those rain curtains will wrap around the entire mesocyclone rather than the tornado itself. Although I do think you can, again, very briefly see that tornado funnel.
I think
it's hard to tell.
Well, I was going to say, I think based on the funnel or what we could see of it and the rain curtain, I think it might be. I'm actually not sure.
Yeah, and I'll let the National Weather Service kind of do their analysis on that.
And we have fun like speculating and stuff, but obviously,
typically tornadoes are wider than their condensation funnels would indicate. Too.
Yes.
And now it's moving away from them. Yep. I mean, look at the blinding rain behind this thing. I mean, that's just incredible stuff. I mean,
I'm going to skip a bit.
And look at the power now. You can't, it's dark there now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wow.
That's a heck of a video. That rain curtain, seeing the wind shift and then seeing the rain curtain around is incredible stuff.
It really is.
Because you see the winds very briefly, they're blowing at him, and then they very briefly calm down and then accelerate towards the tornado as it got closer.
Make sure to like all the videos we use. Okay, so here we have damage on Wheatland Drive and 24th Avenue. So this is not. I'm trying to think where I'm not sure where Wheatland is, but I know where 24th is.
24th runs just to it's on the east side of Norman. So I would imagine it's probably near Classen, if I had to guess. It's probably one of the north-south. It's probably one of the neighborhood roads in there.
That is.
Look at that.
I can't even imagine coming home to that.
Yeah. Again, we can't speculate as to how well these homes were built, but this is fairly significant tornado damage.
Mm-hmm. A lot of these homes are made of brick. So
they are, which is why you see the lower portions of the house staying sturdy. Brick tends to be a very sturdy building material in terms of fighting off tornado winds.
Excuse me. Yeah, so this is aerial photos of this. It's from Sky News. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is Eastern Norman. I think this is closer to Lake Thunderbird.
The roof's just ripped off.
I mean, that's just significant damage.
Cars totaled.
Actually, go back to that first photo. I think you can see. I can't tell if that's man-made or not. But you see on the bottom left there, so the spiral feature in the dirt.
This?
Yes. I'm wondering if that's from the tornado itself moving into there. Or it could just be debris getting thrown there creating that. But regardless, you can see the spiral nature of the wings.
I would say if there was debris here, well, I mean, I'm not sure. It could be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say for certain.
Yeah, I don't know what to say it is, but
I obviously, again, not the professional, But my guess would be this is EF3.
I was gonna think low end EF3 because some of the damage, like when I look at the damage, the extent of the damage here, and then I look at the extent of the damage, like with the Southeast Houston tornado.
I mean, that's fairly significant roof
right
damage for
around there.
sure.
High end EF2, low end EF3, somewhere in there.
It looks to me like this.
Is that oil?
I think it's a propane,
gas container.
Or
yeah,
some kind of. This looks like where it used to be, so it I think it's shifted that a bit. Maybe it's again hard to tell. But yeah. Oh wait, actually, hang on. We could probably figure this out through this picture. Oh well, never mind. It's not zoomed out enough.
And look, see this photo, folks. I mean, this is an indication. This is probably not a very wide funnel at this point. As you can see, damage really only occurred to one house significantly. And that's the thing with tornadoes. They can be very confined in their wind field. And if you just happen to get hit by it, you're going to have more damage than your neighbors might.
Well, and also, you can get damage outside the wind field too.
Yes, the condensation funnels where those strongest winds are. And the funnel forms because of the pressure gradient within a tornado condensates the air around it. But the actual tornadic wind field is wider than that condensation funnel.
Let's see what else we got. Oh my gosh!
I mean, that's a sheet metal building, so it's hard to really gauge. Those can get damaged in some lesser tornadoes.
Well, but I'm looking at the tree here.
Yeah, the tree damage is pretty.
So that's a big tree.
Yeah,
it's like look at the width of the trunk.
You can see a little bit of deep arcing, I think, on some trees in Norman.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Also, there is a church that
the Cross Point Church, which is just off Highway 9, had its steeple torn off. And then this is the South Oval.
Really crazy.
This is the one you're talking about?
Yes. I mean, you can see the power flicker here on the. I was watching this in real time. This is what I was watching last night. Look at the power cut off. And then the blinding rain as the tornado moved past, and then it eases up behind the storm.
Wow.
Some of the cars, too, that were, turned over.
Look at the power in the building flickering. And for those who don't know, the OU power system is below ground and has backup generators, so it is very hard to get the power to cut out at OU. But you lose visual of the physical science center there.
I was going to say, are you sure it's the power flickering, or is it being?
There is. You can see the lights if you look at the gateways arches there at the front. If you go back to the very beginning, you'll see the lights there are on.
For a brief moment.
Yeah, you see some of the lights cut out.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't tell if that was the power cutting or if that was just being obscured by the. No, you're right. That is. Wow. That's cool. Yeah, so that's the blender. That's the Physical Science Center. It's called the blender because it looks like a blender. Wait a minute. Where did everybody... Why does it keep happening? I really don't. All I can say is we'll work on it.
It's Monday.
We will continue to work on it.
Monday and my part of my weekend. When you're a shift worker, you don't know what day it is sometimes.
Can't confirm that. It does get a little rough.
Okay. I'm actually not sure how long we've been going. Since
almost an hour and a half now, I think.
Okay. Let's go ahead and, I guess... Well, was there anything else y'all wanted to add? Let me go through... We've done
Ben, anything for you? I think I just kind of wanted to cover the severe stuff from yesterday. So anything you wanted to go over?
Well, I guess from an aviation standpoint, yesterday's severe event, there was a Southwest plane that was trying to fly through the severe weather. the good news on their part, at least, is they were over majority of the cloud tops and everything at 39,000 feet, but their descent had to have been very, very steep. And this was something that Kevin Abbott, who's also kind of interested in the aviation weather side of meteorology, was sharing. And when you do a steep descent like that, you can avoid the convective driven turbulence, sure, but the problem is that when you're descending rapidly through a very, very high sheared column of air like that, you're going to see a lot of at the very least moderate turbulence, frequent moderate turbulence on your descent. There's not going to be any light there. It's just going to be you're bouncing around constantly, basically. And you know, and that's the biggest thing is when you have a lot of shear like that, you're going to want to do a step descent and everything to avoid the impacts of that on your avoid the impacts of that while flying when it comes to turbulence. But when you have when you have a bunch of storms like that and you're trying to avoid it, it's a sticky situation because you can't do that step descent or you're going to get inside of that convection and all those updrafts are going to could potentially give you severe turbulence. So it was kind of interesting to see because to avoid the severe turbulence, you're still having to hit quite a bit of turbulence from wind shear on your descent.
I'm not gonna lie, I got a little lost on some of that.
Ben is the aviation expert here.
Ben knows all about aviation stuff, and we should definitely consult him again because I want to cover more aviation stuff if we can. I had a thought while we were talking. I think I know why. I think because of the winds here, the cable and internet is cutting in and out. I think that's why we keep losing y'all.
That'll do it.
I think.
Impacts.
I don't know for sure, but I noticed my phone wasn't connected to Wi-Fi for a minute, so
The wind is indeed whipping down the plains.
it's bad today. It's going to be bad the next few days, but nothing will be as bad as yesterday this week, thankfully. So, all right. Well, Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to shout out your Twitter or Facebook or MySpace or something so folks can find you?
Let's see here. So I will do my Twitter because I don't have MySpace.
Making a comeback, didn't you hear?
Ben_Kassel, KASSEL is my
Alright.
Twitter handle.
And we'll have that posted in the description as well. All right, I think that's it. I'm out of stuff. Anybody
Yeah.
anything lasting to say?
Ben, one last question.
Yes, I already know what you're gonna ask.
Are you pro Twister or anti Twister?
I would say I like watching it and everything. But there's things about it where it's like you look back and you're like, it doesn't really
Ben might be another neutral.
Ben's
check out.
pretty neutral.
But
Ben's pretty neutral.
I'm like a neutral person with that. Yeah.
All right. The reason we
It's
ask
fun
is
to watch. It is a fun movie to watch, though. You do have to admit.
it really is. We're kind of keeping a running poll. There appears to be a lot of divisive. There's a lot of division in the meteorological community.
It's like a fun movie to watch, but then it's like, well, this doesn't really check out. But
well, I think our stance is it's fun and entertaining, and we don't really care that it's not scientifically accurate. I think that's but yeah, people either love it or hate it, and we're compiling a list, and we're gonna make them fight.
Because like I can kind of understand both sides, like the people that hate it because it's not accurate, but like it's also a fun movie to watch. So
we should get a tally list.
Yeah.
Keep track of our guests. All right, I think that's gonna do it for us today. Sorry again, folks, for all the technical problems. I'm not sure why that is. I think it might have been the internet cutting out. We do have really bad wins today again.
Maybe something with Discord too. Could be.
Well, I don't have Discord running. This
Oh,
is all through Streamlabs. But I do apologize for that, and I also apologize. I've been probably kind of raspy. I've been under the weather, so pun totally intended. So I think when we wrap it up, I'm gonna take like 10 cough drops and go to sleep. But all right, thank you all for tuning in. We got big stuff planned. If you don't already, go ahead and follow us on our social medias. They're up here in the corner. And we'll keep you updated as to what we got coming next. But I think that's it. So see you.
Till next